The film opens with a woman named Becky. Determined, she wakes up early in the morning and goes out for a run in the forest. Her house is away from everything as she lives in the middle of a forest. She stops near a pond for a while when she is done running, and then heads back to her home where she starts to take a bath. Once finished taking a bath, she decides to play the piano, which is one of her hobbies. As she is playing the piano, a mysterious boy appears behind her, and when she notices his presence, she looks back at him and asks what he is doing. He has an axe that he puts on his shoulder and replies that he is dreaming. The scene now changes, and we see a loving family who is driving towards the same house where Becky was living. As they walk inside the house, we are introduced to a man named Luke, who is the husband of Gail and the father of a young boy named Josh. While he is talking to Gail about how they will fix and clean the place, he realizes that Josh is still in the car and is not going inside. Luke goes outside and knocks on the window while telling Josh to go inside, and it is very clear that Josh is upset about something. Distressed, Josh goes inside as he does not talk to Luke or Gail. Instead, he goes to his room without saying anything. Gail then starts looking at pictures of Becky, who is with Luke and Josh. This reveals that Gail is the second wife of Luke and that Becky was Josh's real mother. Becky had passed away, and coming back to the house refreshes that memory, which explains why Josh is traumatized and upset. At night, Josh approaches Gail in a very strange way with a picture of Becky. He starts telling her that Becky was his real mother and that Gail could never replace Becky. When he walks away, Gail pours herself and Luke a drink as they both sit together and start playing the piano that Becky used to play. While Luke is trying to teach Gail how to play the piano, Josh feels devastated and runs upstairs. Feeling bad about it, Luke goes after him so that they can talk. He enters his room and sits with him, while explaining that no one is trying to replace Becky and that Gail is a good person he wants to be with and find happiness again. But Josh is still crushed by the loss of his loving mother and fails to comprehend how he can move on as Luke did. Hoping that Josh will move on from this on his own, Luke tries not to comfort him any further and leaves him alone. When night falls, Luke and Gail sleep together while Josh sleeps alone. He experiences a terrifying nightmare where he sees his mother Becky again. He is more than happy to see her once again, but is petrified as he starts to notice blood coming down from her head and then her entire face splitting open. Josh instantly wakes up and is now sleeping with Luke and Gail. She explains that having nightmares can be a good sign. As we get to know that Gail is a psychiatrist, she claims that Josh must be letting go of his trauma and people often suffer nightmares in that process. The next day, Luke is outside of the house trying to get some signal since they are in a forest. Once he gets reception, he gets a notification informing him that he needs to go to work for a day. While he is packing a few things in his car, he explains to Gail that work is important and that he will be back at night, and even if not, he will most definitely be back by tomorrow. Gail also ensures that she and Josh will be good together, explaining that some alone time between them might be good for Josh. It could help him move on and accept Gail as a new member of the family. After that, both of them decide to go hiking all alone in the forest. Josh starts to feel upset again about the passing away of Becky. Before Gail can say anything to comfort him, he starts to run away. He goes near a well and stands on top while threatening to jump inside. While Gail inches closer in an attempt to calm him down, he jumps inside the well. Gail is more than relieved to see that it only resembled a well. Josh is only pulling a prank. This might be a sign that Josh is slowly moving on from his trauma since he has started joking and fooling around again. Both of them continue walking until they reach an old shop called Dreamcatcher. Josh goes inside it, despite Gail suggesting otherwise. Both of them think that the place is abandoned, but to their surprise, an old woman named Ruth walks out and claims that this is her shop. She tells them that they can get many valuable items on sale in this shop. Ruth starts talking about spirits and how they can haunt a person's dreams. While Gail does not believe in anything Ruth is saying, Josh is quite interested because of the kind of dreams he has been having. Ruth also recognizes Josh when he talks about Becky drowning in a pond and passing away. As she takes him inside the shop, she tells him about a dream catcher, which can help in making bad dreams go away by keeping the spirits that linger in this forest away. However, Gail intervenes and does not let Josh buy a dream catcher. She takes him away as they both head home. While walking back home, Gail tells Josh to not believe what Ruth is saying, so Josh sits down to have a proper talk with her. Gail brilliantly explains that the nightmares forming inside his head are caused by things that he is constantly thinking about. Traumatized, all Josh can think about is his mother passing away, which is why he keeps having nightmares about it. However, she clarifies that he can get rid of that trauma by simply talking about them and expressing his emotions, which would help him a lot in releasing those thoughts and not thinking about them all the time. She further adds that he is in control of himself and that if he thinks about the good memories he had with his mother, his nightmares will stop. After hearing this, Josh thinks that all of this makes much more sense while also developing an attachment to Gail. Both of them then head back home. Gail reminds him one last time that she will not let him buy a dream catcher from Ruth. At night, Josh is sleeping peacefully when Gail gets a call from Luke. She has to step outside because of the bad reception. She cannot hear him properly, but Luke informs her that he cannot make it back. So both of them should come back to the city, but Gail refuses. She thinks that it is good for her and Josh to spend some time together, adding that he is getting better and finally moving on. Meanwhile, inside, Josh has started to have a dream again where Becky walks in, elaborates on how much she loves him, and starts to hug him, which shows that he is finally having good dreams. Unfortunately, his joy is suddenly stripped away when he notices that Becky's face is falling off, prompting him to scream. Gale hears the scream and runs inside, only to see that Josh is having yet another nightmare. She wakes him up and calms him down. She decides to sleep there for the night, just for the sake of his comfort. The scene then changes and Gale now wakes up in the morning, discovering that she is alone in the bed and Josh is missing. Worried, she starts to look for him everywhere. Meanwhile, we see him entering Ruth's shop. He starts talking to Ruth, who is accommodating, until he brings up the fact that he wants to buy a dream catcher to make his bad dreams go away. Ruth is politely trying to discourage him when Gale walks in, feeling relieved to finally find Josh. Josh explains that he wants to buy a dream catcher to make his nightmares go away, but Gale tells him to go and wait outside while she talks to Ruth. As Josh waits outside, Gale mentions how some of the stuff Ruth is doing can be very offensive to some cultures, but Ruth begs to differ. She wants to prove her point with facts. She tells Gale to wait while she goes and finds a book from which she can prove that nothing here should offend any culture. While Gale waits for Ruth to return, Josh runs off and goes to the back of the shop, where he starts to look for the dream catcher. After looking for it briefly, he eventually finds it and decides to take it home. He puts it in his backpack and heads back home, while Gale, on the other hand, finds a drawing in Ruth's shop. Ruth does not like the fact that Gale was looking around in her shop and found the drawing. She assumes that the drawing is related to someone named Noah, and mentions that she knows about the accident because Luke told him about it. Ruth claims that Noah, Becky, and everyone else's passing was not an accident. Offended by the woman's nosiness, Ruth tells Gale to immediately leave the shop. As Gale is leaving with Josh, Ruth warns him to never come to her place ever again. When night falls again, Josh goes to bed and Gale turns the light off. As Gale is leaving, Josh mentions that he feels brave tonight so she can close the door as well. She obliges, not knowing that he plans to use the dream catcher. Just as she leaves, he takes it out from his bag. He firmly holds it and sleeps with it, and later, Becky appears in his dream again. She starts telling him stories and Josh gets a little scared, thinking that something bad will happen anytime soon, but Becky assures him that this is a good dream. She hugs him and starts to play with him normally. We also see that Josh is laughing in his sleep. In the morning, Josh is sitting outside when Gale shows up. He starts to wonder why Luke is not back yet. Gale assures him Luke will come back as soon as he can. Until then, both of them should do something fun. She then questions him about how he slept last night, and he shares how he saw her mother normally and that he finally had a good dream after a long time. He then expresses his hunger, so Gale suggests they cook pancakes together. While going through their cupboard to find ingredients, Gale bends over to find something, but the door above her opens. She gets up and hits her head thinking that Josh did it as a prank, but he strongly claims that he did no such thing. When her tone gets slightly aggressive, Josh runs away and she feels a little guilty. She even checks the door again and observes that it is not loose in any way, so it cannot open on its own. To make up with Josh, Gale takes him fishing, where she again convinces him to open up about his feelings. He expresses that he feels like his mother will always be with him, no matter what, and he simply cannot move on from her. After that, when he swings the rope to throw it in the water, he accidentally hits Gale's hand with a hook, but she handles it very well by not panicking. They go back home and she removes the hook from her hand while telling Josh that it is alright, because it was just an accident. Josh also hugs her after apologizing, a sign that he is starting to feel closer to Gale now. Gale feels a little tired, so she sleeps on the couch, but when she wakes up, she sees that she is surrounded by many pictures of Becky, and this frustrates her. She instantly goes to Josh's room to tell him that his pranks are not funny anymore, and that he should stop doing them. Before she can say anything though, she notices that Josh is still sleeping, so she steps about the room and goes away. She then finds a newspaper where she reads that an 11-year-old boy named Noah parents and his neighbor with an axe. Gale quickly understands that Becky passed away in the incident and Luke lied to her and Josh about Becky drowning in a pond. As night draws near, Gale hears that Josh is playing on his tablet, so she tells him to turn it off and sleep because it's getting late. She also confronts him about what he did with the pictures of Becky, but he denies putting those pictures there. However, she still thinks that he is lying because there is no one else in the house, and the only person who could have done it is him, but he keeps denying it. She leaves while telling him to sleep. Gale is now reading a book when she hears the tablet turning on again. So she goes upstairs to Josh's room, but finds him sleeping, so she leaves again. Meanwhile, Josh is having a dream again. And this time, Becky is telling him that Gale is evil and that he needs to get rid of her if he loves his real mother. Josh also agrees with Becky and claims that he will end Gale's life because he loves her. It becomes evident at this point that Josh is interacting with an evil spirit manifested by the dream catcher, and it is manipulating Josh. The next day, Gale is outside again as she is unable to get proper reception. And when she finally does, Luke calls her and informs her that he cannot go back for another few days. She is a little devastated at this point and wants him to come back, but the call ends and she heads back home. Next, we see Gale cutting a sandwich while Josh is drawing something and drinking juice. But since he plans on ending Gale's life, he purposefully drops the glass and breaks it to distract her. She thinks that this is an accident, so she does not get mad and starts to clean things up. While she is cleaning up, Josh picks up the knife she was cutting the sandwich with, and attempts to hurt her, but is unable to do so in time as she gets up and starts looking at his drawings, which turn out to be very off-putting for Gale. After this, she tries to look past everything and starts to do fun activities with Josh, like playing games and cooking marshmallows over a fire. Gale believes that all of this should fix things between them, but when she goes into his room at night, she finds more disturbing pictures under his bed, which makes her deeply concerned. She then goes back to her room and sleeps, but she gets startled when she hears the door opening and someone going outside. Without wasting a second, she runs out and sees that Josh is sleepwalking and is going towards the pond where he thinks Becky drowned. He even sees Becky in the pond. The boy wants to jump in so that he can be with her, but Gale approaches right on time to wake him up. Josh is shaking with fear and is breathing very heavily, but Gale clarifies that it was all just a dream, so he should calm down. Josh feels scared, but he is relieved to see Gale, so he hugs her and they head back home. Meanwhile, Ruth wakes up from a seemingly bad dream and somehow realizes that the dream catcher from her shop is missing. She goes to the back of her shop and is shocked to see that the dream catcher is actually gone. She realizes that Josh took it because no one else lives there. Gale is now sitting with Josh in the living room and is trying to get him to sleep when they hear a knock on the door. It is Ruth, and she straight up barges inside while claiming that Josh stole something from her. Josh instantly runs up to his room and Ruth follows him. He hugs the dream catcher before hiding it under his pillow. He doesn't respond when Gale asks what he stole. She tells him to return whatever he took, but Ruth claims that the item is evil now, so she does not want it anymore. During this, Josh takes out the dream catcher, giving it to Gale, claiming that he does not need it anymore. Gale goes outside with the dream catcher to hand it over, but Ruth becomes terrified of it, instructing her to destroy the item because it is no longer safe. Gale demands an explanation and asks what happened to Noah and Becky, but Ruth reiterates that she has to destroy the dream catcher first, so Gale throws it in the fire. After this, both of them sit down and Ruth begins explaining that she used to live with Noah and her parents. Back then, Noah was just a sweet little boy who would not hurt anyone. On one Christmas Eve, Ruth found the dream catcher on a yard sale and was told that it keeps evil spirits away, so she thought that it would be a perfect gift for her grandson. However, she expresses how that was the biggest mistake she made, because the dream catcher was pure evil. She claims that it possessed Noah, which is why he lured his parents to the woods where he used an axe. Then, he went to Becky's house to do the same to her. Meanwhile, while Ruth and Gale are talking, the evil spirit who was pretending to be Josh's mother finally shows its true face and gets on top of Josh, making him unable to move. Gale tells Ruth that kids have certain issues, and if not dealt with properly, they can get extremely aggressive. Gale once again claims that she does not believe in spirits and any voodoo-related things will not fix anything. In the morning, Gale is startled when she wakes up and sees that Luke is standing right by her. She gets a little angry and tells him what she has been going through, emphasizing that he should not have been gone for this long. He apologizes about it, while Gale explains how Josh needs serious help because he has been sleepwalking and trying to purpose. However, Luke thinks that all of those were just accidents. Later, they go out to eat where Josh serves everyone pie and a glass of milk. When Gale drinks the milk, a glass shard goes into her mouth and hurts her. She claims that this is Josh's doing, even though he argues that he has not done anything. Even after this incident, Luke still thinks that Gale is just paranoid and does not blame his son. At night, Josh is trying to sleep again when Luke talks to him about everything that has happened between him and Gale. However, Josh tells him made-up stories about Gale and paints her out to be a bad person by lying about how Gale told him to stop dreaming about Becky. Luke is a little upset by this and talks to Gale about it. As expected, an argument ensues. She claims that she never told him to stop dreaming, and that he needs serious help because he keeps trying to hurt Gale on purpose. However, Luke gets mad and does not agree with this. Then, he tells Gale that Josh does not need professional help and only needs to spend quality time with her father. After this, Gale raises her voice and claims that she wants to get out of the house first thing in the morning. At night, while Gale is sleeping, she experiences a nightmare where Becky approaches Josh and hands him an axe as they stand over her. As Becky forces Josh to use the axe on Gale and end her life, Gale instantly wakes up from this nightmare. Suddenly, she notices that Luke and Josh are coming home from outside while holding axes. As she goes out and questions what they plan to do, Luke claims that he will go and chop some wood with his son to have some quality time. A little disappointed, Gale reminds him that both of them should come back quickly because they need to leave this place today and get Josh some professional help. Meanwhile, Ruth has a nightmare about that same evil spirit as well, and she wakes up screaming just to find the dream catcher on her lap. Shocked by this, she now knows that it is indestructible and that no one can get rid of it. After this, while Luke and Josh are chopping some wood, Josh gets mad and asks why Luke lied to him about his mother drowning in a pond. Before Luke can explain, Josh hits his hand with the axe and injures him very badly, and it is now clear that Josh is completely possessed by the spirit. Luke returns home and Gale sees his chopped off fingers. Suddenly, Josh attacks her with the axe as well. She hides under a table, but when she comes out, Josh manages to get on top and tries to off her, but Ruth comes and stops him. While Josh is distracted with Ruth, Gale knocks him unconscious. However, while Gale is busy with Josh, Ruth knocks her unconscious. Gale then wakes up to the sight of her and Josh tied up by Ruth, who claims that Josh has been completely possessed. She does not believe it until he starts speaking in a demonic voice and convinces Ruth that Noah, who ended his own is now inside Josh's body. Ruth lets him loose, but he instantly ends her existence and approaches Gail with murderous intent. Frightened for her life, Gail now sees the spirit completely. She screams, loudly exclaiming that she just wants to be a mother. The spirit stops for a moment after hearing this, and Gail manages to cut her ropes and run away. She also takes the dream catcher and buries it deep inside the forest. She then runs away, while Josh is walking all alone and gets a ride from a stranger. Next, a group of kids are then seen playing in the forest and one of them finds the dream catcher.